Press record. Okay, we're in it. This is CareerDrip. This is a platform where we actually bring you different careers and different courses. And today, I'm so blessed to have this leader with me, this brother with me. And today it smells like money, Today I wanted to smell like money, because I'm talking to someone in the chartered accounting profession, or I could say in the accounting science profession. And today we have Kwena Abram Mosenye, who is actually a CA trainee, or chartered accountant. Someone once told me that there is a difference between a chartered accountant and an accountant. What's the difference?
Sure. There's quite a bit of quite a lot of differences, but I think the core part of it is the training that one goes through to become a chartered accountant and the skill set that one gets. So ordinarily, as soon as you're a third year, you've got your BCom or whatever accounting degree, you're an accountant. That thing gives you qualification to go and do somebody's books, and you're fine, right? From an basic accounting perspective. But then we take it we take a different path from there, whereby um, just from school perspective, you are taught more about the business as a whole, and not just the accounting part of it. So you would be taught the auditing part of it. You'd be taught the strategy part of it. We go into even the costing, all of that. So yeah, and then over and above that, you go on and then you go through this training, like you mentioned. I'm a CA trainee, so now you go through this 3 years of rigorous training in practice, where you actually assess companies, you do actual papers, you actually do what you were taught in school. So yeah, the process takes 7 years. Whereas for like as I said, if you get a degree, you can be an accountant, you can apply for an accounting job somewhere. So yeah, it's mainly more about the training and the skill set that one gets over the course of the 7 year period.
So there is more into being chartered.
Yeah, one could say, one could say, yeah, one could say there definitely is more. It's very open-ended, and I think probably we'll talk more about it when we talk about what I do on a daily basis, what other CAs do out there, and all of that, and you will then clearly see that being a CA definitely does give you those other skill set that just being an accountant won't give you. Yeah.
Yeah. So you are in the corporate investment banking. I'd like to believe.
Yep.
Diversified lending credit. It's HOA. Big
Sure.
very popular. Out of my brain.
Sure.
And
Sure.
this is this year, and I like to believe that last year you were also in the same sort of department, investment banking, but then you are focusing on property finance as a sales guy there. It seems like investment banking is following you around.
Um, I'd like to believe that. Yeah, I mean every bank's engine is CIB. Like I think in our case at Nedbank, it makes up about 50% of overall group performance, right? So yeah, it's a big business. It's a business that can stand on its own as a bank. So yeah, it's been quite a good, I guess, 2 years now. I was on the front sales office side, and then now I'm somewhat middle office-ish in the credit side. So yeah, I enjoying the CIB space. That's for sure. Yeah.
We're gonna get into more details on that, because I'm very obsessed with. Well, I used to be very obsessed, like super obsessed. I don't know right now how can I rate my obsession, but I used to be very super obsessed with the banking system and how it works, and like it for me, it's like magic, but is how these guys have created this circulation of money. I used to liken it to the Stockfell model, if you actually think about it. But this one, their model is so risk averse. You have to accommodate for risk, sophisticated, and those are the things that you do daily basis.
Sure. Literally, my job is to look after the credit risk of the bank. That's my daily job, is to make sure that every rent that goes out the bank, we can get it back effectively. So credit risk is the risk that we don't get our money back, basically. So yeah, as a credit manager, my role is to make sure that we sign off on good deals. Let me rather say
Yeah.
that.
No, great stuff. So,
Sure.
uhlala koskrale jo. Uhlala
Sure.
koskrale, you know. And like batho ba tswa ko Skrale, le batho ba tswa ko Pitori, like hey, le nna ba nna cotton. Like hey, people from that side they dress very well, bro. Like I wish I can have that such of a dress sense that you guys have that side.
Yeah, I guess it's like the Kotani and stuff. There's those guys there who would be wearing your Gucci's and whatever's. But equally so, I mean, I've thought I've been dressing normally. I wouldn't say it's a Hamas thing per se. But yeah, there's been some trends that I've picked up for the like Scotanis and people who dress. You know, those guys who be wearing like super expensive shirts and like belts and whatever's. Yeah, those trends I have seen them in Pretoria there. So yeah, fully agree with you on that.
So, born and bred, are you born and bred in Hammanskraal and
Sure.
or
Yeah, so born and bred Hammanskraal in a smaller village called Danhouse. So in that, like literally, everything was there from primary school, crèche, primary school, secondary, and tertiary. Um, very public schoolish, very villages, really. I don't really classify myself as poor from home because everybody was poor. So like we all good. Like when you're in like Sentin and you're walking in there in this environment and you can somewhat see that actually people's wallets are different here. You can just that sense, when you walk into Sentin City and you're walking through the mall, you get to feel that there's a different level of wealth in this place, right? Whereas at home, because everybody was like below middle class basically, there wasn't a feeling of poverty per se. Because when everybody's struggling, it's all kind of are able to deal with it better. Versus when you are struggling this side and somebody next to you has a Golf 7 and Lamborghini, and once in a while you hear Ferrari driving by, you hear. So it's a different kind of arrangement. But yeah, born and bred there. Only came to Joburg through school. I think it was actually my first time being in Joburg, believe it or not, when I came to UJ. Yeah, so yeah, that's a little bit about myself. I am the last born of three. Um, yeah, mother and my dad passed on in 2002, so I was raised by a single parent. And then, yeah, like I'm saying, there wasn't millions running around, but we were fine.
yeah, talking about your mother, because there is a very interesting story there. Because every accountant or every not let me not say accountant, but let's say people in the accounting profession that I've met, equally
Yeah,
so people also within the economic cluster and also in the financial sector, they always have a story of them having had an influence on business on them. You can find
yeah,
that someone is saying that no, like I grew up in a family where there were businesses, or this thing happened, then business sort of had an influence in their life. And with you, I like to believe that at some point your mother was an entrepreneur, had some tuck shops.
sure, sure.
There, and is that the love for accounting? That's why it actually was conceived.
Yeah, you could say that because on a daily basis I would go out there. Obviously, when I'm not in school, so I was a bit of a nerd. But yeah, when I'm not in school, I'd be at my mom's shop. We were selling kotas and basically lunch food. In Babelechi, it's like an industrial zone basically there in Hamaskra. So we would go there, sell kotas, and I would be obviously the one dealing with the change and the actual sales part of it. Should be running the more of the cooking and the key, those other parts of the business. So yeah, I enjoyed that. And then as I obviously grew a bit more, I realized that actually maybe I want to be wealthy, and one of the fastest ways to do that is be an entrepreneur, right? To make your own money in some way, shape, or form. So believe it or not, when I graduated from crèche, they bought me a bicycle for a present. So what then happened is that I drove that bike. Then I finished it. Believe it or not, you can finish a bicycle. I drove it until it's like beyond repair. I got another bike, and then I started lending that bike out. So I would use the bicycle to go to school rather. So I was using it to travel to and from school. And ordinarily, when you get to school with a bicycle, there's maybe one or two other kids in this whole school who has a bicycle at school. So people want to take a ride in my bike. So what would then happen is I would charge them like some sort of a rental fee for them to take a ride across the road during break time. Made quite a bit of pocket money there. Like I would charge like a 1 rand for you to ride, like from Vets to UJ, for example, right? You go there, you come back, you give me 1 rand. The next person comes in, you go, you come back, 1 rand. I enjoyed the time of my life. Then, then through my mother, then started going to school with sweets. So I would sell sweets at school. That was primary and secondary. And then when I got to tertiary, I was like, you know what, I just need to study now and make sure I get a bursary. So I stopped all of that. Yeah, and then focused on books. But yeah, entrepreneurship is one of the key ways I figured I need to get into to be wealthy.
And that's the story. In fact, I'm someone who like to listen to a lot of people in business. And just I'm so fascinated in their story because I always have this saying to be like, there's something special about these people. There's something special about how they think and how they see things.
Sure.
And almost all of them, they actually have the story that you're saying. They start selling.
Sure.
Like it's more like this thing is inherently in their blood.
Sure. I would say people do learn how to sell eventually in life. If you want to actually start something of your own, the one key thing if you want to start a business is to know how to sell. If you can't sell, just go home, get a job, and just do that. So yeah, it's something that you can learn. And for some of us, yes, it does start at a very very early age. Yeah. So that's the story on my side, man.
So let's talk about your alma mater, the University of Johannesburg.
Sure.
You have some qualifications from there. You have a bachelor's degree, Bachelor in Accounting from UJ, and you also have a PgDip in Accounting Sciences. That is the CTA from the University of Johannesburg. Why the University of Johannesburg?
In high school, I tried to apply everywhere I could. Even my teachers helped with application fees and stuff. So yeah, I had applied like pretty much all the top tier universities and stuff. And then fortunately I performed well enough. They all gave me offers. But what was key was the funding, obviously. There was no way I was gonna ask my mother for 100,000 rands every year. It's just not gonna work. So the struggle.
Yeah.
So what I then did, obviously, that I applied for funding, and I did get a bursary at Tutuka. So Tutuka is a SAICA-based fund, which basically manufactures CAs, for lack of a better word. So what they do is they take non-CAs in high school and they turn them into CAs 7 years later. That's their main goal, basically. So I applied for that, and the universities that I applied for, so on there you get two options, which is with the ones I chose was UJ and Northwest University. So yeah, my decision was mainly funding based. Because Tutuka gave me the bursary, Vets gave me, I think they gave me 9,000 rands of some registration off. and I think to NSFAS as well. UCT also gave me NSFAS. I think tax gave me something, but obviously I had to go with where I had the most funding, which was UJ. Um, but equally so, I've also looked at their statistics as a university as far as producing CAs is concerned. Black CAs, the mix, and the nature of the teaching itself. I mean, obviously, all of these things you are reading from a brochure, to be honest, because you don't have access to these things when you're in Hammanskraal. You can't really go and visit a lecturer at UJ, you know. So yeah, that's how I ended up at UJ. Think it was a good choice after all. Yeah, after all, I think it was a good choice. Yeah.
No, I think it was. I was talking to this other lady who she has done her Bachelor of Science in Accounting Science at Wits.
Okay.
And I think when she was doing her CTA things, she used to collaborate or study with people from that side. And
Sure.
she used to tell me that, yeah, I think that side they're having it actually very great. I think just the experience, the culture, because in some
Sure.
institutions it might be, I don't know, there's this professionalism whereby you can't just chill with your lecturer, and
Sure.
this person was like, yeah, UJ, it seems like, there is that, close collaboration between the lecturers and the student, and which gives the whole
Sure.
thing a very good experience.
Sure. No, that's very true. I mean, I have a friend now who was my lecturer in first year. Now has turned into a close friend, and like, it works like that. They give you access to their cell phones. You literally, as you're studying, you can text them as what's this thing, WhatsApp, and say, here's a screenshot. I'm trying to figure this out. This is coming from this source. Can you help? And then in where they can, they do actually try and assist. So yeah, I think okay, okay,
Okay. So Kakos Kraleda, and you
sure,
come to Johannesburg, the big cities, and for us, the rural kids, when we come to Johannesburg, I used to joke with the students saying that the first time I actually had cheese was at Rest in Joburg. I mean, at Rest when I was coming here as a student. Even the first time I showered, and some of the students were even shocked to be like, really? And it's the reality for most of us. And you come into the University of Johannesburg, and there is even now the university experience now. How is that for you at UJ?
I think as is the case with a lot of guys that come from the villages, there's that time where you're a bit overwhelmed with everything, because obviously the city life is faster. There's too many things happening, and there's always something happening. And then equally so, there's also a lot of distractions that one could have easily fallen into. My transition was made easier because of so I have a relationship with Albakwe Dipale. Dips Dipale.
I know the man. Yeah.
Of course, you know the man. So yeah, so I've met him maybe about grade 11 or so.
Oh.
He was doing some sort of a CCSF workshop there in Hammanskraal, and met him. I basically, we pretty much clicked there right there and then. So when I got to UJ, that's the first person that I contacted to say, hey, where's this thing called the CCSF? And then he linked me up with the right people. So that's how I then ended up at the CCSF. And obviously through that kind of a structure that is consistently there, that is consistently supportive, that can also consistently put your life into into a nice structure where you know that on these days I'm going to church choir, on this day I'm going to night vigil or whatever. It helps occupy that free time that you could have easily used to I guess mess up your varsity life, I guess. So yeah, that was the key thing for me. And obviously as the years go, I then got more and more involved into that arrangement. So yeah, that's what made it easier. But equally so, it's not like while I was at Dires, there weren't those other temptations. There's a place called Stones there. I think it's in Melville or something. So I would have guys who I'm living in the same cluster. I would be going there. But ordinarily as well, you also have to rely on who you are as well as a person.
Sure.
So yeah, one's character then kind of gets very clear out in those kinds of instances. Yeah, I
And
guess we all survived it. Yeah.
yeah, we did. We really did. You know, that a lot of
Yeah.
temptations, like you say. And I
Correct.
think
Correct.
my journey is similar to yours as much as university
Sure.
experiences. I actually used to say to people close to me that my whole university experience was just ZCCSF. So, by the way,
Sure.
ZCCSF, for those that will be watching this, is the Zion Christian Church Student Fellowship. You know, at universities, there are different societies or clubs, as they call them. And as you say this, I think the importance or the takeaway here, because I actually met you through that and through leadership.
Sure.
I think
Sure.
we experienced leadership probably at the same time, and you start to also learn other skills that you actually need to learn as a student, you know, that you're actually going to
Sure.
use when you actually get out of the system or when you get to corporate and stuff like that. I want us to touch
Sure.
base on that, you know, especially talking to
Sure.
accounting students now. What would you say that in the campus level, what are some of the skills? Because you're already in industry, you're not longer doing reading books that are very big. I used to see accounting students reading these big books. Like I used to be like, they actually made me like I'm not schooling. I'm like, Evan, these people. How can you read such big books? But you yourself, you're in the industry now. We're talking about application, of course. We're also talking about theory. But in terms of skills or the skill set that you think an accounting student should have.
Sure. So I want to I want to quickly broaden your question there a bit. So I think the key thing starts with when you are walking into varsity as a student, even maybe when you're a third year or whatever it is, you can still make these kinds of calls. You have to decide what you want the outcome of your varsity career to look like as you're walking in, ideally. So, which will channel quite a lot of what you will pay attention to while you're in school, and it will also channel where you try and I guess broaden your exposure while in school. Because in my case, I knew that I wanted to train in a bank, so I knew that my path as a chartered accountant is I need to do this 3 years of training. The question was then, where do I want to do this training? And that's why I decided, okay, I want to be in a bank, and I have my own reasons. Perhaps we'll talk about those later. So um, out of that, then I knew that for me to be in a bank, I needed to also have a very broad CV, a well balanced CV. So I need to have good academics, good socials, good corporate exposure. While still at varsity, also needed to make sure that my what do you call it? My social responsibility element of it is also reflected in the in the CV. So fortunately, when you join an organization like ZCCSF, it takes care of quite a couple of these things, right? And also the leadership aspect of it as well. So those things are also like what you could call elements of some of the elements of a balanced CV, I guess you could say. So what then happened was that with me, I made sure that while I'm at varsity, I made sure that I exposed myself to the corporate world as far as possible. And what that meant was um, applying for vacation work as much as I could. Like whatever vac work came, I had to apply for it. I remember at the beginning of each term, I would sit with my calendar, I would then go, okay, for this company, when is this thing opening? For this company, when is this opening? And I would do all of that and apply where I need to apply, set reminders, like almost every recess. Actually, I think all of them. Every recess that I had at school, I was doing something with a corporate. I was, I think, let me, if I could recall, in first year, June recess, I was at PwC doing their work. I think that December, in first year, I did EY. The following year, I think I did KPMG. Then I also did Nedbank as well. I also did First Round. I did Sanlam. I did Rothschild. So those are just some of the corporates that I made sure that I expose myself to. And just see how these guys do it. So what ordinarily happens is that, and this is more directed towards the CAs part of your audience. In these backworks, you get to engage with CAs that some have qualified, and in some instances, those that are actually doing the training. So you get to ask those questions, and you get to hear it from the horse's mouth what they do on a daily basis. So when you get to the end of your fourth year or your CTA year, and you're applying for a job in a bank, when you tell that bank that I don't want to be, I don't know, maybe I don't want to be in auditing, you have a very concrete reason why you don't want to be in auditing, because you have been in auditing throughout your third year, throughout your studies. You've exposed yourself there, you know what's happening there. Instead of just saying, yeah, I do want to be in a bank, and you want them to take you at your word. So yeah, corporates are key while at varsity, that exposure. And then the university itself as well has its own initiatives of making sure that they develop you as an individual over and above as a student. So you just mentioned that we met through leadership. So those leadership skills, I got them through the ZCCSF, where I was a chairperson. I think you were also chair when we were. Yeah, that's correct. So yeah, where we were chairperson and you are leading this organization, you've got there's so many dynamics that are happening. You know this best. There's so many things that you are always juggling around, and those skills you can actually put them out there in your interview. You can actually talk to them and say, hey, I've been in this situation, I've dealt with this kind of instance of situations. And when you've got an experience that you can link to your CV, it makes it more credible, right? So then there's the tutoring opportunities, which I also did, um, varsity tutoring maths and whatever else. So yeah, it was really a matter of trying to make sure that my CV was well balanced. And then there's the other societies, Golden Key and the rest of them. If you're not a ZCCSF fan or a member or anything, hell, there's like your Golden Keys in this world and the other societies that you can actually engage and take a leadership role. Ordinarily, you wouldn't start by being a leader. You start being a member, prove yourself. Like with me, I started as a member at the CCSF. I then was a deputy secretary, then became chair. So yeah, apply yourself in those kinds of environments, and then one should be fine as far as building that CV is concerned.
And that's what I call the university experience, and in two forms here, because I was talking to this other first year some other day, and we were talking about the university experience as we were just talking about these things. And I realized that
Sure.
with him, he thought that the university experience is actually about the parties, all of the fun and everything.
Sure.
And I was like, okay, that is there, of course, it's part of the university experience.
Sure.
But the big part of the university experience is actually you building the skill set, what we call
Sure.
soft skills, communication, leadership, and everything like that, because you're going to
Sure.
need them as you go forward. So I think it's very good as you elaborate that students should actually, in campus, should not just be about academia, but they also should,
Sure.
involve themselves in societies and clubs, or there's a lot of activities that one can actually do
Sure.
in campus. And as you're saying all of these things, I think one of the things that I'm also picking up is intention and association, and I know that you even participated in the CEO sleep out, and I was like, wow, that's
Oh yes.
how was that?
Yeah. That was one hell of an experience, eh? So I seriously, but so what happened was that I think it's Sun International that organizes the CEO sleep out. I don't think it has happened in the past 2 years or so.
No.
Obviously, this year being COVID and stuff.
Yeah.
But ordinarily, what happens is that some CEOs, well, Sun International would open up this opportunity to CEOs and I think 3 members of their choice to make a team of 4, and they would pledge a certain amount, say 100,000 as a donation to whatever charity that Sun International would have listed there, and then they would also pledge to actually see, or rather, get an experience of a homeless person. And what that then means is that they would actually have to sleep out in the open. And in many instances, this happens at Nelson Mandela Bridge there in Bray there. So so the CEO of Westbank, that is part of First Rent. So First Rent has, I think, four legs, and then they've got the Westbank part, which is basically the vehicle financing business. So what they do there is that he then went out and said, okay, I want a student, I want a colleague, and a high school student, right? Out of a high school learner. So what happened is I was selected. I don't want to go through that process of how I was selected. I was selected together with these colleagues, and then we went there, we slept there. So there you would find CEOs of other different companies. You spend the night with them, sitting literally around the fire, or in sleeping bags and in card boxes and all of that. Obviously, the security side, because there's like billions of friends worth of people sitting sleeping on the bridge there. But it's just really the experience itself, and I guess most of the gesture that they put out there. Yeah. So yeah, really nice experience. Yeah, and then I guess I came to Nedbank.
I think this is the classic example of mingle with the people you want to become.
Sure. That is true. Maybe you'll be a CEO, right? No, that's a good example of it, man. Yeah, so you met quite a couple of guys there, and others, I guess what you could say, students as well, vets, UJ, whatever. And yeah, you spend the night connecting and stuff. What then also actually happened was with in my case, after that engagement, the CEO of Westbank then gave me his contacts, his personal number, and then he asked me to talk to his daughter, because his daughter was, I think, a year behind me in varsity. So he wanted me to just talk to his daughter about about basically pseudo mentoring, I guess you could say. And yeah, nice experience. But yeah, very good way to I guess meet these guys. They're not alien. They're just normal people.
True that. And we come to university, and I think university on its own it's like a life. It's a new life. We're in university now.
Sure.
There's a lot that goes on, and then the aim is to get to the graduation hall or to graduate and wear your gown and the belt. It's always a very exciting time. And you graduate, and then after that, now there's another life that is waiting for you after varsity.
Sure.
So how do you juggle that, yourself?
Yeah, it's a very difficult place to be honest, at that switch, because you know how they say varsity gives you freedom, and whatever else.
True
that gets multiplied 100 times when you now can also make money on top of that, right? So obviously there's those pressures at work that you also have to deal with, be it social pressures whereby now there's this group of cool guys driving these calls and whatever else, always going to those nice those I don't know what else is there. There's those guys, the nice life guys. And then there's this other bunch of guys who are super serious, already starting a new qualification. That's just after honors, already doing your qualification and all of that. So there's those dynamics that are there. And then on top of that, you then also have to deal with instances where also you have to look back at home, where your mom has been looking at you go to school, kill yourself through school. You went through high school 12 years, then you put in an extra 4 years. They're expecting that now my kid is going to make it now. Now we are fine at home. But then you find that actually when you get into these corporates, the salary, depending on where you work, obviously, is not as glamorous as you would think because you're still training, right? So yeah, then you also have to manage those expectations at home. Equally, so you also want to give back at home as well. So you have to manage that as well. So yeah, my transition was very fortunately I had a very understanding family, I must say. They gave me my time to figure out what I wanted to do, and then do what I want to do whenever I want to do it, as far as giving back is concerned. And then equally so, when I joined varsity, rather the corporate world, what was fortunate for me was that I Nedbank sent me to Nedbank Namibia. So I literally flew to Namibia and worked there for 2.5 months. So while I was there, I was away from my group. You know that group that I was back in Joburg. So I was this loner there, joining these new guys, and there's a different culture and a different vibe in Namibia. So by the time I come back to Nedbank, everybody's in their groups, right? There's the weirdos, there's everybody's in their groups. There's the casual guys and all of that. And I mean, obviously, I'm not saying that's all they do. I'm just saying that there's those people who have become friends. Like it's quite clear that this person is this person's friend. So yeah, then I came back and I was just like, okay, so who's my friend now? But what the blessing in disguise with that is that now you get to choose who you want to associate yourself with.
Sure.
Yeah, so it was easier for me because of that. I flew to Namibia. I was there for 2.5 months, and then when I came back, my family understood that I'm not a millionaire yet, and also that I'm still figuring a couple of things out. Equally, so I was also again leaning back on ZCCSF, because we also have this alumni committee arrangement where you can still attend those services even after university. So some of my friends were there as well. So then I would continue with those relationships. So yeah, I guess it's a thing of, as you walk out of varsity, just stick to your guns, know who you are, because whatever extra money that you get that you think is buying you that little extra income, that little extra, I guess you could say, freedom, you're probably going to make a lot more times than that. Are you going to change every time you make an extra 100 rands per month? So you kind of, at some point, you have to be the person that you want to be, regardless of how much money you have. Yeah.
Wow, that's very powerful, man. That's very powerful. The Namibian experience,
Sure.
I understand that you actually send there by through Nedbank, because they have like branch that side, I like to believe. How was the experience for you there, and what were you doing in Namibia?